Alright guys, done a little wiring on my dash. Got a lot of stuff finally hooked up and done. There's only the triple gauge pod I made custom. That's the only thing left to wire. But I have to repaint that triple gauge pod, so I'm going to have to wait on that. But I've got kind of everything else wired, and I'm getting ready to check some of the stuff. So right now I'm going to flip the remote battery on. Now the dome light came on. I've got some of the main lights out in the garage so I can kind of see. So the dome lights are working. Which I knew those were working yesterday, but anyway, let's see. That's still kind of hard to see with the, yeah, instrument cluster's lit up. Not real bright. Clock's lit up pretty bright. And heater control unit's lit up. What else can I check here? Let's see. Let's try. Got an LED light up there for the turn signal. Other one's working. Oh, I changed out an LED for the bright light as well, so the bright light's working. That might surprise some of you guys that don't know these 55 Chevys very well. The bright light indicator is red, like on new cars it's blue, so that is correct for 55 to be red. And actually on an original instrument cluster it is a bow tie that lights up red, so that's kind of cool. But all right, so my blinkers are not gonna blink because I don't have any of the front stuff hooked up. So, and the other thing about it is I'm not 100% sure because I've never done an LED conversion on the, you know, those United Pacific LEDs on the turn signals. I've got them for the front and the rear, and I had a guy tell me that I was probably going to need to change my flashers out to LED flashers, so I may have to do that. Anyway, I'll turn the light on here so you can see. I got handprints all over my chrome. So I had the instrument bezel, the piece that snaps on here on the front, and the piece underneath replated. I also had the heater control face replated, the clock bezel over there replated. Something else I had replated, and I don't remember what the heck it was. Oh well. Anyway, so the chrome's all fresh, and those are OEM parts, so I did that because I know they fit well. I haven't ever tried the new stuff. But if you can see that in an instrument cluster without it being a glare, which it's probably going to glare, the bow ties in the backdrop of that Speedo are the bow ties from the dash trim. It's an original set that was banged up. I just made it, cut it out, formed the ends and everything, made it fit just like an original, mounted it in behind there. Now originally on these cars, the turn signal indicators in each corner are little arrows, the shape of an arrow, and I welded those up in the original faceplate on this Speedo. It's steel, and then I went in and I drilled a hole that the LED would fall into, and then I put a washer behind it and tack welded it in from the back so that LED light would drop down inside, because the LED's domed and it was hitting the Speedo lens, so I had to sink it in there basically. So I have green LEDs for the turn signals, and then I used a red LED for the center for the bright lights. And I've got a 56 temperature gauge that will be hooked up. 56 was electric, 55 was mechanical capillary tube. So I have an electric 56 unit in here, and then a brand new 456 Chevy sending unit in the engine. So the factory temp gauge will work, although I'm putting a triple gauge pod over here. I changed out the indicator here. I can't remember who makes this, but this is for the overdrive, so this is showing correct, because originally it was a Power Glide, and Power Glide for 55 was park, neutral, drive, low, reverse. So I have a 700R4 overdrive in here, and it's the first generation, so it's all mechanical Speedo. So the factory 55 speedometer cable does work on the 700R4. So I have my headlight switch mounted underneath on a piece of steel that I welded up under there because I got the no holes dash trim. Originally your headlight switch is right here in the bow tie trim. The cigarette lighter goes here and there's a radio here, and then if you had the optional rear speaker switch, it went here. So I opted for the custom smooth one-piece dash trim. But anyway, you've seen the bow ties and the dash trim back there for a backdrop. They're also in the heater control unit, and they're also in the clock. That clock is a AA movement, takes a AA. It's a movement I got from Hobby Lobby for people that make custom clocks. And so that whole clock system is completely custom, and I made it from an original clock that had actually, I found that clock in an old salvage yard, and I walked up to a 56 Bel Air that was pretty stripped out, and that clock was laying on the ground and it was messed up. It was wasted from laying on the ground for years. So that's the main housing on the back is what I needed, so that's what I stripped apart and, you know, modified and cut up to work with that. But anyway, man, I'm pretty happy. That's pretty cool. That's a little bit more progress today. So the my 12-volt outlet is now hooked up. My RPM dial for my shift light that's now installed in my Autotronic eye, now that's all hooked up. So now they pretty much when it gets to its shift point, like if I ever decide to get on it and rip through the gears or, you know, rip somebody at a stoplight or something, when this shift gets to its shift point, that little orange LED inside there will light up and glare off the windshield, kind of like a heads-up display on some of the new cars. You know, it's one of them aftermarket Summit adjustable shift lights. It's just a tube and it has a dial on the back of it, and you aim it straight toward your face. So you mount it under your dash or on your collar or whatever, and it aims toward your face. So I had one guy tell me, well, it's going to blind the shit out of you. Well, what's the difference of it aiming at your face? So I ended up taking the bulb setup out of it, and I changed it over to a single little small orange LED that is not really that bright. It's just bright enough to catch it on the windshield. When I first started building this car, I had the midnight drags in mind, because me and my cousin and a couple of our friends would always go to the midnights. Used to go all the time and race our cars, and just for fun. So I had that in mind, because when you get, you know, when you're racing after midnight, obviously, you know, it's dark, and those shift lights are really, really nice. And also, you never know what you're going to get lined up beside. Sometimes you may end up beside something that's open header. You need a shift light to know when to shift, because you can't hear your engine over the car that's beside you, unless it busts your ass, and then you ain't got to worry about it because he's so far ahead of you. You can hear your engine to shift. But we used to pretty much live at that drag strip in Tulsa. We were track sluts. Had a lot of fun. I had a lot of different cars I raced up there, but everything I had, I never trailered it there. I always drove it. So the fastest car that I ever timed that I had was an 87 Grand National Buick with some mods done to it. It went 1175 and 114 miles an hour. It's the fastest car I've ever had. I had a Monte Carlo SS with 100 shot of nitrous. It had a dome piston small block in it. It went 1197, and I don't remember the mile per hour on it. I had a short, wide, square body, full-size truck with air conditioning and all. It was a nice truck that I showed and drove all the time. It had a small block in it, 100 shot of nitrous. I think it had a 411 geared rear end in it, though. It went 1334 to 105. I had a lot of cars. I had another Monte Carlo SS that had a bone stock 400 small block in it with a Edelbrock carburetor. It was just a hodgepodge of parts I put in there and run it. Now, those Monte Carlo SSs have 373 gears from the factory. I had I think it was a 400 turbo in it, and that car went 1397 or something with pretty much a stock 400. I mean, it had headers, you know, and intake and that type of stuff on it, but I was pretty impressed with that. Oh, I did 305 heads on that 400, which everybody, you know, says that kind of sucks, but the 400 that I used was a 76 or 77 model. Had 76cc smog heads on it. I had a set of 305 heads here that were rebuilt. So I used the 400 head gaskets, drilled the steam holes. You know, I used the head gaskets to mark where the holes go in the heads, and I drilled those 305 heads for steam holes and put them on there, and that car run that good with just a 58cc 305 head on a 400 small block. So good thing on a Monte Carlo SS, it run pretty good for just nothing. Stock cam and all. I mean, stock old time chain. It was just a good used engine out of a, I think it was out of a four-wheel drive Suburban or something. I don't remember. I've had all kinds of crap that I used to race on the track and just loved the hell out of it. I used to street race a lot when I was younger. A lot. I lived for street racing. I worked at Bayliner. I was a deck hand. I got to be careful when I say that. We would actually assemble the upper deck units for the boats and then move it down the line. I worked there for a couple of years, and I would get paid on Friday, go cash my check, and I would go street racing that Friday night at a place in Fairland, Oklahoma, and race some guys up there. A bunch of Mopar guys over there. Had a lot of fun. I had a Grand National there one time. I had a 70.5 Camaro split bumper. Had a 468 in it, 400 turbo trans. That car was pretty fast. I never run in on the track, so I don't know how fast it was, but that thing can move. Street race did a lot. I had a two-door post 55 Chevy, 383 small block in it with World Products heads on it. Had hooker headers, 373 posi. That car run good. I never timed it. I did race a 1280 car and almost outrun him. He had slicks, so he got out on me, but I was just about to get to his door at the finish line. We were racing quarter mile. All the street racing days. I kind of miss it, but I kind of don't miss all the money I spent on that crap, man. Man, that's a lot of money. Always buying speed parts. And I'll tell you another funny story. I had a two-door post 55 Chevy that was blue pearl. It was GM's pickup color in the 90s, I think. It's called Bahama Blue Pearl or something, Bahama Blue Metallic. Anyways, a two-door post I bought that way. And it had 11 something to 1 pistons in it. And it had the old double hump heads on it. And it had a head gasket shim for a head gasket. And that thing would move. But back in the 90s when I had that, you could get 93 octane around here at the pump. Can't get it anymore. But I used to have to put 2 cans of 104 octane booster in it, which was the black bottle at the time. 2 of those cans in it and fill it up with 93 to keep it from detonating. But holy crap, that car would move, man. Had a 9-inch Ford with 411 gears, had a posi unit in it. It was a 400 turbo, I think, as well. But here's the funny story, because I didn't know. I was in my early 20s, mid-20s. I found a guy that had a blower, like a big blower. I think it was a 671 blower that takes 2 4-barrel carburetors and has a belt about that wide for a small block Chevy. So I went and bought the thing, had 2 Edelbrock 600s. I stopped by O'Reilly's, bought an intake gasket set, 2 carburetor gaskets, and I drove back home. At the time we were living in a really small town. I put a towel on the roof of the car and I set that blower up there and had the belt on the towel, had the intake gasket up there and everything. Well, there was a guy that worked in a mechanic shop there, an older guy, and he would always stop and talk to me. I don't even remember what his name was. Anyway, he got off work that night and he was driving by and I already had my intake off. I just pulled the intake off the car. It was like I think it was a Team G with a 2-inch rise on it, and is what I had on it. And anyway, he pulls in, he goes, "Are you putting that blower on that car?" And I said, "You damn right, and I'm gonna go race it this weekend." He goes, "You can't put that blower on that motor." And I was like, "Why is that?" And he goes, "'Cause you got dome pistons." Hell, I didn't know. So at the time I went in and I got the phone off the wall, an old corded phone with the rotary dial. And I called Summit Tech Line and I told the guy, I said, "Will this work?" And he goes, "Where are you from?" And I said, "Oklahoma." And he goes, "You Oklahoma guys are crazy." He goes, "I don't think that engine will live too long with that much compression." So, I mean, I didn't know anything about blowers, man, but I was getting ready to put a 2.4 blower and pull the hood off my car. I already had the hood off the car and around behind the house, so I was fixing to blow it up. Pretty funny story. But Anyway, if you got time for another street racing story, I'll tell you that one. This one, it's kind of funny. The two-door post I had, it was red and black. It had a 383 in it, and I used to street race it a lot. Had 8-inch rallies on the back and 7s on the front with, you know, the beauty rings and the center caps, little derby caps on there, whatever you call them. And me and my wife was driving from Grand Lake to Tulsa in it. The car got like 6 miles to the gallon probably. But back then I didn't care. And it was the only thing I had to drive too. So anyway, we stopped in Catoosa, Oklahoma by the Blue Whale. And we were sitting there at the stoplight and 2 kids pulled up beside me in a 5.0 Mustang and revved up at me. It was on. When the light turned green, I smashed it with all it had. That thing went left and went right and went left and went right, and I never let out of it until it finally hooked in second gear and off I went. I dusted that Mustang like you would not believe. I got down to the next stoplight and it was green, but I went ahead and stopped and waited anyway. And then when they got up there, he goes, "Hey, you lost your beauty rings." So I had to go back. I turned around to U-turn and went back. I lost both center caps and both beauty rings. Never did find one of the center caps, but I did find both beauty rings. But anyway, kind of funny. I had that center cap here for a long time, and I actually gave it to a guy that needed one for his car, and he didn't care what kind of condition it was. It had some pretty bad rash on it after it skipped across the road a little bit. But anyway, I ended up replacing them with new ones, I think. But pretty funny story because back then it was foot to the floor everywhere I went. Anyway, guys, I'm going to get off here. Probably getting close to dinner time. Time to take a little bit of a break. So thanks for watching.